sit-in with Rook HD1. It's almost like he's helping me to checkmate himself, and I'm sitting right here, and 3 feet from me, Fabiano Caruana is playing. Hi everyone, so this is Sahil, and today I'm coming up with a new concept. So for the past many years, I have traveled to many countries. I have played in tournaments all across the globe, and specifically in Europe and the US, and it's been a great experience. The main purpose of this video is to share my journey. I'm going to start with my first international tournament that I played in the city of Las Vegas. This was the Millionaire Open, which had a huge prize fund, and it made a lot of sense to travel even as an amateur. I wanted to play in the under 2000 category, which also had some great prizes. Even though I did not win the tournament and I did not win the first prize, I did win enough to cover up my expenses, and that gave me the luxury to have this amazing experience of visiting a foreign land, especially the amazing city of Las Vegas, which is known to never sleep. I'm going to look at my experience in that tournament, to look at my games, also some other fun stories that I kind of had during the tournament. So let's begin with this interesting video. I hope you like it. Well, the trip started by us booking the flights and making the reservations. We did not know much about where to stay, so we basically stayed at the official accommodation, which was the venue for the tournament as well, which is the Planet Hollywood Resort. It's right on the Las Vegas Strip, right in the center of the city. It was expensive, but I think we did not have much clue about where else to stay, about a new country, and we were 3 people, so we could share the cost, of course. And finally the day arrived. I remember like my parents were excited and I was also very excited. I finally took a cab to the airport. Now the reviews I read online were terrible, but somehow Etihad Airways has always been my favorite. I mean, for the past many years, whenever I've had the chance and whenever the fares have been reasonable for Etihad, I've always preferred that airline. So once I checked in my luggage, I reached the immigration and the first stamp on my passport was finally there, and the passport was inaugurated. I finally boarded the flight. Now when I landed in Los Angeles, I wasn't so impressed, to be honest. The city was beautiful, very planned. However, it was not my perception of what US would look like. I had never really traveled abroad and it was a slight disappointment. It's hard to say why, but it was just not meeting my expectations. Maybe my expectations were too high. But all of that changed once I boarded my final flight, and everything at the airport was amazing. I boarded my flight to Las Vegas, and finally when I reached Las Vegas, I was stunned by its beauty. The flight landed at night, and Las Vegas is amazing. I highly recommend, if you visit that city ever, do make sure your flight lands at night, because the city is spectacular in view. It has many fancy attractions. All of them are full of lights, and it's fun to look, amazing to look at from the airplane. And once I landed in the city, we basically took a cab and we went to our hotel. Now I remember my concept of a hotel was a few rooms, a few floors, and let's say a restaurant, and maybe if it's a hi-fi restaurant, maybe a gym, and that's pretty much it. However, the concept of a hotel is completely different in the city of Las Vegas, and of course in many parts of the world, but Las Vegas is very special in this respect. And the next day was free for us. We spent the entire day roaming around and could not cover the entire hotel itself. There were so many shows going on, be it magic shows, dance shows, music shows. There are circuses going on. There are like mentalist shows, there are comedy shows, it's like you could literally spend like 1 lakh rupees just watching shows on one day in one hotel. It's just amazing. Of course, we did not have that kind of money. It was kind of good to even see all of this. I was very much amazed. There are 2 pictures in front of you. Both of them look like the remnants of some ancient Roman Empire. However, one of these pictures is from Las Vegas. So the question for you is, which one is it? Well, The answer is both. Both of these pictures are actually from Las Vegas, and surprisingly, both of them are from inside a hotel. Yes, from inside a hotel. Once we reached the tournament hall, every player was in line, be it any player you can imagine apart from Magnus Carlsen. I mean, there was Hikaru Nakamura standing in line, waiting for his chance. There was Fabiano Caruana. There were so many top players waiting in line and trying to register, and it was such a fanboy moment for me. I was 23 and these people were my idols, and I was looking at them right there standing, and it was amazing. I was a bit shy back then, and I wasn't really, let's say, the kind of guy who would run up to a celeb and then ask for a picture, but my friend did, Weber, and he took a picture with Nakamura, he took a picture with many GMs, and then I was even told by the organizer that I look a lot like Levon Aronian, although I wish I could play like him, that would be a better deal. And finally I went back to my room, and then the next day we had the tournament. Also a well-dressed competition. The person who is the most well-dressed would get an extra $100 prize. So I had taken along with me a suit, and I really love this suit, and I wore this for the first time there, and I bought it for that tournament. And I remember when I was wearing that suit and I roamed around and I was waiting for the round to start, Maurice Ashley, you might have seen him commentating at the St. Louis Chess Club. He personally called me up and said that he had not seen a suit so good for a long time, and that was a kind of a huge compliment, and I kind of started blushing like a little girl. And there were Lawrence Trent there, and they were Alejandro Ramirez, all of them were standing there, and I had a conversation with them. And finally the tournament began, and all of the players were standing in line to enter the hall. Strict checkings for each and every player. It doesn't matter who you are going to be checked from head to toe with the scanner, and you cannot have any mobile device or anything metallic on you. It's almost like airport, let's say. And because of these checkings, there was a huge line. I saw Kwang Liam standing in line. I saw many Indian grandmasters as well, and I was standing with my friends and we were waiting to get in. And finally we got into this huge tournament hall. There were thousands of players playing in that tournament, and I remember playing my first game. I was very nervous, and this is the game we're going to look at right now, because this was my first game abroad. It holds a special meaning in my life, and I need to look at this game right now. So my opponent was rated 1899, and his name was N. Shahram. He was from the US, and this is my first game. So I had recently looked at the Daniel King's DVD on the night off, and I had been playing it for, let's say, a couple of tournaments at least, so I had some experience, and this is what I played here. So e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3, a6. Now this is the main position of the night off. So you can see white has one less pawn in the center, so that gives black long-term chances. However, he has the central knight, and that means he will have more control over the center. He has a slight lead in development. For example, bishop e3, and you can see black has only one piece developed, white has 3 pieces developed. So this is the thing you have to analyze. This is the classic system, the bishop e3 system against the knight off. Now e5, so black pushes his pawn in the center. This is classic opening theory. Knight b3, bishop e7, queen d2, bishop e6, f3, castles and castles. Now a5, this is the move I had prepared. However, my opponent surprised me immediately. Now there are many moves here. White can play a4, trying to cement the b5 square, or he can play bishop b5 with the same idea to control the a4 square and preventing black from expanding on the queen side. Or he can play moves like queen e1, queen f2. There are many moves here, but he played the move knight a4, and I was very surprised and I was extremely nervous. I was completely shocked by this move because this doesn't make much sense, because the knight is already developed. I think pushing it here does not really stop the pawn. I can always try to remove it via many means, and I played the move knight f d7, which looks like the logical move. White has kind of tried to control this square. I am just controlling the square. However, d5 is possible here, and if he plays knight a c5, we just played d4, and this is perfectly fine. However, if he plays something like knight b6, then you play d4, knight takes, and knight c6. So this was the interesting idea. So basically, if you play something like c3, you play a4, c takes, pawn takes, d5, pawn takes, and you can see this is a crazy game. And of course, I wasn't going to go into such complications. I wanted to stay normal because I was quite confident that I could possibly win the game. So why kind of complicate matters so much? So I just played knight d7, which is the logical move in the position. King b1, and now I played queen c6. Knight c6 is also possible. Queen c7, queen f2. So he's again trying to control this square. And now knight c6, I have to develop this. I don't think black can control the b6 square in any other manner. Bishop b5, and now f5. Now this might look bad because you're opening up the king, but the point is the knight on a4 is away from c3, so it's away from d5, and the queen on f2 gives black enough leverage to kind of threaten this. And if white were to capture, which he did, now I captured with the bishop, which looks logical because you are kind of attacking the king. But rook takes f5 was even better because you're kind of controlling the d5 square, and you also kind of threaten moves like bishop g5 to exchange this bad bishop on e7. So after this, bishop f5, a3, my opponent is trying to, let's say, prevent moves like knight b4, which would pressure the pawn on c2. I played the move king h8, which is a prophylactic move. Here bishop e6 was best. However, king h8 is also good. Rook d2, bishop e6, knight b6. Now finally white lands his knight on b6. I take, bishop takes, and queen b8. Now white has a bind on the queen side, so these two pawns control black's counterplay. However, white has used significant portion of his pieces to do this. I mean, the bishop on b5, the bishop on b6, and the queen also has to stay on f2 to control the bishop. He has put so much investment into this one strategic concept that I think this is overvalued for white. Black is perfectly fine here, and now he captured on c6, which was a clear mistake because now I am controlling the d5 square with the pawn, and I have the open file towards this king, and this was a clear mistake. Knight takes a5. He just wanted to capture a pawn, but usually when you're castled on opposite side of the board, like in this case, the pawns in front, your pawns on the side of your opponent's king don't matter at all. They do sometimes, but in most cases you would rather get rid of them just to have open files, and you can see how white is going to suffer in this game. So c5, kind of trapping the bishop. Knight c6, queen takes b6, knight takes e7, and rook takes a3. This is the move my opponent missed. Now the pawn is pinned. He probably expected me to attack the knight somehow, but rook takes a3 is possible. Now rook d1. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video for a while. I try to come up with a winning move here. It's black to play and win. What do you think black can play? Just pause the video for a while and try to come up with the solution, guys. So the solution here is rook a1, and after this my opponent resigned because he has voluntarily blocked his king's exit route by placing the rook on d2, and he locks it in with rook h d1. It's almost like he's helping me to checkmate himself. And now I played rook a1 check, and my opponent resigned because after king takes a1, I simply play queen a5 check, and after king b1, queen a2 check, king c1, and queen a1 is checkmate, and I won this game convincingly, and that was a huge boost for my confidence. Now after winning my first game, I managed to win my second game as well. So you basically had to score roughly 6 out of 7 to qualify for the semi-finals, and I was already on 2 out of 2. However, my third round on the morning next day was on the top board of the under 2000 section, and what the tournament organizers had done was that the first board of each section under 1200, 1400, 1600, 1800, 2000 and 2200 would be sitting among the top players of the open section. So when I went to my chessboard, it was being broadcast live, and I am sitting right here, and let's say 3 feet from me, Fabiano Caruana is playing. for me this was too overwhelming and I did blunder spectacularly. I'm going to show you right now. So this game was against Romero, and he was a youngster from the US, and I played the Benko Gambit. Now I had recently understood the Benko Gambit, and I had tried to understand it from the video by Alejandro Ramirez, a chess based video. It was a DVD which he released a few months prior to the tournament, and I kind of went through the video and I really loved the Gambit, and I played the game by his recommendations. And surprisingly, while I was playing the game, I looked towards my left and right there is Alejandro Ramirez himself. I almost felt that he's going to slap me on my head and say, "This is not my recommendation, you're playing so foolishly," and this was constantly going on in my head. It was just too overwhelming. And I remember while playing this game, sometime in between, Fabiano Caruana came and started watching my game for a full 15 to 20 seconds, and it was just too intense. I could feel goosebumps all over, and it's not because I have a man crush on him, it's just because these guys are basically celebrities in the chess world, and for a player who was rated 1800, it was a great deal to be in the company, in the vicinity of these players, and I'm sure you can understand that feeling. And it was absolutely amazing for me, and maybe that is one of the reasons I just could not handle the pressure in this game, and I'll show you how I lost this. Let's have a look. So it's d4, knight f6, c4, c5. This is the Benko Gambit. Nowadays it's not so recommended because there have been some lines found with queen e2 and a4 especially, which are very good for white, and black is often struggling. He can hold on to a draw, but a miserable draw, I think. At that point, theory was still developing in that line, so it was a still great bet. And d5, b5, so black has decided to sacrifice his queenside pawn. And now a6, he offers another pawn, and now he plays g6. So he will of course capture this pawn pretty soon because there's no hurry to capture it. He waits for a move, and now he will be a pawn down, but he will have two open files towards white's queenside, and if he manages to win even one pawn, then he will simply be better. So this is the idea behind black's play. Knight f3, bishop a6, knight c3, d6, g3, bishop g7, bishop d2, castles, and knight bd7. Now rook b1. So white is already preempting black's attacks on these pawns. So he already plays rook b1 and gets the rook out from the diagonal of this bishop, which can be important sometimes. Now queen a5, bishop d2, and bishop b7. So this move is very clever because you're forcing white to play e4, which he will, because right now the pawn is not hanging because this is a threat. So now I play queen a7, now the pawn is hanging, he plays a4, now I go bishop a6 back, and now I control these light squares, and that was the whole point of this bishop d7 and bishop a6, just to force white to play e4, and now you control all these light squares and the bishop has an open diagonal. So he played rook fd1 and now knight g4. This is the classic Benko move. You will get the knight to e5, and then the bishop and knight together will control these very important light squares. So a4 and now knight g5. Knight takes, knight takes. Now if you play the Benko Gambit, it's a classic principle to remember that you should exchange knights. If you can exchange knights, then your bishops will come into play very comfortably, and you can put a lot of pressure on these pawns. The number of knights you exchange, the easier it becomes for you. So now he played knight b5, which is a mistake. He should have played bishop f4. Even then, I think black already has decent compensation for the pawn. Knight b5, takes, and now I made the mistake. Because I was playing in this scenario where Fabiano Caruana was watching my game, Alejandro Ramirez was watching my game, Nakamura was playing just a walking distance away. This was kind of, let's say, gave me a adrenaline rush, and I was overconfident during the game. I just felt that I was in some amazing company. I was 2 out of 2. I was some super grandmaster playing some tournament, and I did not stop and calculate my moves properly. This is a huge mistake, guys. If you feel overconfident during a game, if you feel that you just cannot go wrong, just try to calm yourself down a bit, lower down your emotions or lower down your excitement, and try to think logically. because here this pawn is hanging, and I hurried with the calculation that I made, but there was a flaw in it. I played the move queen a4, which is a clear mistake. He took, and rook a1. Now this was still better, even though now I think white is still slightly better. I realized my mistake and I played rook a8, which is just a horrible move to play. And after bishop c3, I followed up with another blunder, which basically decided the game in his favor. Played rook fb8, which is just a horrible move because now he has rook a6.
Romero is
now I will let Tanya's Dave let you explain the remainder of the game.
Nico Chrysanthou yesterday, and very importantly, that extra one is this one on b5. And this last move he made, rook to a6, is a very high-class move. To a6 is a phenomenal find, and the idea is very simple: double up the rooks on the a file. Because
it is amazing. Sahil Tickoo definitely having a very tough game.
After the setback, I actually lost the next game as well, and I was already pretty sure of not qualifying for the semi-finals, and that was a huge heartbreak for me.
The end result was that I basically could not qualify for the semi-finals, but I did manage to get into the prize list, and I managed to win enough to cover all my expenses, and that was still a great deal to have such an amazing experience.
During my college years, I was also in the dance society, and I performed many times in the college and also in other colleges for competitions, and I was a big fan of the dance group Jabbawockeez, and it was amazing because they actually have a live show in Las Vegas, and I went there and I saw their show. It was amazing, and personally it was just overwhelming for me to be there and see them live. And the most amazing part is that I met them personally. I took a picture with them, and this was just out of this world because these were the guys we used to literally worship during my college years, and all of my friends, actually most of them who were in the dance group, used to literally admire them, and I was right there in front of them, talking to them, taking pictures with them, and this was absolutely amazing. Some of you might know about the Eiffel Tower in Paris. I mean, I think everybody would know, but you might not know that there is also an Eiffel Tower in Las Vegas, which is, well, not the same, but yeah, pretty much the same. And I did not know that personally, but I went there and saw it, and there is a Paris hotel and it's right on top of it. I went to the top, I saw some beautiful views, and it also looks beautiful at night right from below as well. There's also this high roller attraction, which basically is kind of a modified version of the normal roller that we have all gone on in childhood. At least 20 to 30 people can board one roller, and you can get on it, and it will take let's say, I think it was 30 to 60 minutes it takes to cover an entire journey, and it will go in a circle and start from right at the bottom, and you will have the chance to have breathtaking views of the city of Las Vegas, and it looks gorgeous at night. What you're seeing here, me trying to stand in an awkward pose, is basically because I'm afraid of heights. So I'm trying to hold on to the railing to make sure that everything is normal. As I said, there's always something fancy going on in the streets. You can just roam around and never be bored. The city never sleeps, be it 6 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m., 6 p.m., 12 a.m. or 3 a.m. City is absolutely crazy.